Having returned from our journey to Newark on the River Trent, there were a few jobs that I wanted to do on the boat before I took it to Sileby. The first was to replace some inefficient rubber seals on the roof liner with some properly made inserts. One of the problems we encountered when coming back down the River Trent was that because we were going against a very strong current, we got through an enormous amount of petrol. And so by the time we had arrived at Gunthorpe, I had to make a visit to a local petrol station, which involved getting a taxi to take me there and back, which considerably added to the cost of the fuel. So I decided that we needed to buy a larger spare petrol can, so I've bought this one, which will take 20 litres. I carried out a small repair to the bow of the boat because we had been taking in a small amount of water on our trip up and down the River Trent. In order to do this, I used water weld, which is an epoxy resin which is very easily administered. I then covered that with 3 layers of glass fibre. I replaced all of the fender ropes. The original ones, which were made of a plastic nylon, were very quickly fraying when they were rubbing up against the pontoons, so they needed something a little bit stronger. I wanted to add a little bit of extra solar powered lighting for when the boat was moored up at night time. Oh, very pretty. My previous vlog shows us sailing from Shardlow Marina up to Sileby boatyard. The reason that we made the journey was so that the swamp duck could be taken out of the water and could have anti-fouling paint applied to the bottom of the boat. And it would also give me 3 weeks of boatyard space in order to carry out any further renovations. This is the first time that I had seen the swamp duck out of the water. The good folk at the boatyard had pulled the swamp duck out on a trailer and parked it up between 2 buildings where I would have access to water and to electricity. It was with some fear and trepidation that I went over to see the swamp duck out of the water and could see for the first time what the state of the bottom of the boat was like. It had already been pressure washed, and I was quite pleasantly surprised. Although there was very little of the original anti-fouling left, as you can see on these pictures, there was very little damage at all to the bottom of the boat, and it only required filling in a couple of places. So having been washed down and then smoothed over, it would be ready for painting on the anti-fouling, which the boatyard were going to do for me. For saying we've had such a rotten summer, we were very fortunate with the weather at this point, and the boatyard were able to get on virtually straight away and do the initial anti-fouling. It had always been my intention to paint the rest of the hull with a couple of coats of white paint. However, having spoken to the people at the boatyard, I was persuaded that it would be better to try and preserve the original gel coat. The reason for this is that once you have painted over the gel coat, then it's something that you're going to have to consider doing at probably every couple of years or so. And also, it can affect the resale value of the boat when you come to sell it. So it was worth spending some time to see if we could bring the original gel coat back to its former glory. The first thing we had to do was to clean down the white part of the hull with nothing other than white spirit, and this would remove all the scuff marks that had been left after the boat had been bashed into pontoons and old tyres and lock gates and that kind of thing. It took a fair amount of elbow grease, but already the results were quite remarkable. We then applied a liquid rubbing solution which is specially formulated for reviving gel coat. And again, the results were quite spectacular. We repeated this process 3 times. Another good thing about using this method is that we were able to preserve the original name and graphics of the swamp duck, which I really didn't want to have to lose. We then used a gel coat filler for the deeper scratches and bumps. You do have to work quite quickly with this stuff as it dries very fast, and you do need to be quite precise when applying it, as it takes quite a bit of hard work in sanding it back afterwards. We then used a good quality boat polish and applied several coats of this in order to bring a really good shine. You can see from this picture that only after a couple of applications the boat was beginning to have quite a shiny surface. We removed the rubbing streak. As you can see on this photograph, it was quite badly damaged and misshapen. We have painted the boat rudder white so that we might still be able to see it in the murky waters of a canal. It might be easier to see if there's anything wrapped round it. The engine cover also got a makeover, as Steve very carefully masked off the original lettering and painted the whole thing with a black gloss paint. Reinstalled, the engine was now looking a lot smarter. With masking tape and black gloss paint in hand, Steve has spruced up the window surrounds. We then set about installing a new rubbing streak. This was quite a lengthy operation and took us the best part of 4 hours. The rubbing streak comes in 2 parts. There's the holder and then there's the black insert, and it needed to be fitted a little bit at a time. There were an awful lot of holes to be drilled. As well as being time consuming, It is quite an expensive thing to replace and cost me the best part of £160 for 15 metres of rubbing strake. I'm glad, however, that I took the decision to do it, because I think it has really improved the appearance of the boat, and also it will help to keep the hull of the boat a little bit safer from walls and pontoons, and restrict some of the damage that might be done. At this point we have almost finished the work that we intended to do. There's just a couple of other jobs left. My last job was to replace the navigation lights on the boat. The ones that were already there were quite small and not very bright. They have been replaced with some LED versions which are much brighter. The one on the port side was damaged and held together with a cable tie. The last job was for the boatyard staff to put some more anti-fouling on the bottom of the boat where it had been resting on the trailer rollers, and then to take the swamp duck and put it back in the water. So, as you can see, the swamp duck is now back in its home mooring, having brought it back from Sileby. I'd like to use this as an opportunity to say a big thank you to all the people there, and also to Steve, who gave his free time to come and help, and also paid for the navigation lights. So I'd like to dedicate the closing piece of music to all of them, and it's called Baby We Did It. So let's take it away.